Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Morning Magazine for this July 22nd, 2020. I have your host, James J. Malouf, here. In part two today, we're going to speak with Pam Ross and Mindy Ryman from the ODC. Looking forward to talking with them. Right now, we have with us Lance Pliml from the Wood County Board. Good morning, Lance.
Good morning, James. Thanks for having me again.
Appreciate having you. And we got our friends from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media in with us. Good morning, Kevin, everybody. We appreciate you guys over there. Thanks for being in. Lance, first off, how are you and yours holding up?
Really well. And first of all, I just want to thank our Vice Chair, Adam Fisher, filled in for me last month. I had a little bit of, it's a never-ending skin cancer surgery kind of deal, but I had a bandage wrapped all the way around my head and didn't talk real well, so appreciate him sitting in. Our family's doing well. I think the vast majority of people in our county are probably doing pretty well.
First off, I'm glad to see that you're up and about. Yeah, you're all right and everything.
Yeah,
that's
great.
Certainly
I feel
important. Good, right on. You look great. Yeah, you seem good. That's good to hear. I wanted to talk with you about the board, certainly, and kind of start there, if you will. Do we have a kind of an update of what's kind of the main thing on your plate over there right now?
Well, there's a couple things, James. I think the first one, we start to deal with this time of year always is budgets. And obviously that's going to be a little bit of a struggle this year because we are in some uncertain times, uncharted waters. Revenues are certainly down. And expenses are to some extent too, but we're anticipating a shortfall there based on sales tax revenue. So that's a big one. The other thing we're dealing with every single day, obviously, is the COVID-19 issue, where our health department is somewhat overrun with calls, requests. They're working, some of them, 12 plus hours a day, trying to keep up, mostly with requests. Now, if you don't mind, I'll digress here maybe a little bit, although stay on this topic. We have roughly 75,000 people in our county. And so, 7,500 of that would be 10%, and 750 would be 1%. And our total infection rate to date is about 138 people. Of that 138 people, all but 30 are fully recovered. So if you look at the chances of being infected in our county, or the rate, it's almost infinitesimal. It's like 0.0002. It's a fraction of 1/10%. Now, that doesn't mean that this is not a serious situation. For some people, obviously, this has been a fatal disease. But for the vast majority of people, you're okay. So what we're trying to do and balance in our county is that, need for businesses to continue to operate. Those people who spent 30, 40 years building a business and all the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into that, and then being destroyed when something like this happens, with the need to protect the public. But one of the things I wanted to touch on, I received several hundred emails recently saying, please don't pass the mask ordinance that's been proposed. I can tell you right now, whether you agree or disagree, just to set the record straight, in Wood County, there has never been a proposed ordinance, has never been on a committee agenda, nor has it ever come before the county board. So what we're trying to do is balance, the need. We look at it every day. It's a fluid situation. Information changes. A couple months ago, virus could survive on a hard surface for 3 days. Then it went to maybe a few minutes. Are asymptomatic people, are they able to transmit or not transmit based on viral load? So we monitor, and we monitor every day. And our goal at the end of the day is to keep Wood County and the cities, villages, and towns there within as safe as we can, while balancing the needs for the fact that people still have to live. So for anybody out there who's wondering, this is a nonstop, ever-changing fluid. So if somebody said to me, do I need to mask right now when I'm outside or not in a group of people? My answer, this is a personal one, and it's our health department guy, would be no. If you're out riding your bike or you're outside at the lake, you're probably safe. On the other hand, if you're going to go into a group of people, especially if you don't know them, you're going to be in tight quarters, a mask is safer. And it would be even safer if you lived in a bubble. You go back to the, any of the rooms that contain viruses, negative, pressure, anti-room entrances, that's safer yet. So use your heads, use your judgment, be smart out there.
I think you also need to listen to the people that do this for a living. scientists who actually do know what they are referring to and talking about when they talk about these things. I think you also, we talk a lot about, we were just talking about this with Congressman Kind a little bit ago about personal responsibility. Part of that personal responsibility is knowing your health, knowing if you are one of these people if you are in the category of somebody who is more likely to have fatal or bad injuries from this disease. If you are somebody that is more of on a health part of things where you're in better shape or that kind of thing. You have to know that stuff. Everything is an individual case with this kind of subject. And when it comes to the mask thing, that's appreciate you tackling that because that is going to come up, whether it is off the air here and, just in person in town or whether it is on the air here. It's something that you have to balance. Now, you mentioned it a couple times there as far as balancing that, the economy with, people. And we certainly think, I think we all understand, we have enough understanding here that we can have two thoughts in our head at once and understand that, well, we need an economy. We need to have this area in particular, especially with everything that is going on with Verso and that sort of thing. People need to work. People need some kind of income. Businesses need people to shop there and that sort of thing. But it's not going to do us any good. The economy needs people more than anything. And if we don't have enough people, that's going to hurt. So we have to take care of these things. How are you guys balancing that over there? And do you find yourselves, as this drags on and keeps going and everything, are you finding it easier to make those decisions or harder?
Well, first of all, I really appreciate the dialogue because this is not supposed to be a monologue, and I really appreciate the conversational aspect and the questions that way. These are the conversations we have within the courthouse and within the community every day, and there are different, I'll call it, sets of rules or guidelines for various situations. I'll give you an example. If we have a large outbreak of coronavirus and we don't have enough people to man our dispatch centers, to send out police and fire response, we're in deep trouble. If we don't have enough sheriff's deputies to patrol the streets, we're in deep trouble. And so there are some places within the county, even within the county family, that we're extremely sensitive about, that we have to make sure that we contain. Congressman Kind's take on this is absolutely right. This all comes down to personal responsibility and a recognition of where you're at and what you're doing. One of the things that I find amazing, there are some counties who have enacted, county-wide ordinances. And typically, we're not sure that, they're enforceable, defensible, or necessarily even, legal to some extent. And there are challenges out there, and there will be. But, again, personal observation, but it seems kind of ridiculous to me if I'm somewhere and I have two people, let's say on a roofing job, and it's 95 degrees out, and they're 25 feet apart, that they probably need to mask. Mm-hmm. That would be a good example of, maybe I don't. Mm-hmm. Situationally, though, if you're going into those places where you're in closer quarters, where you're dealing with people that are otherwise immune compromised, or just elderly, have less ability to probably fight the virus, then it's pretty obvious that you're going to be safer. Businesses, I personally have no problem with the business requiring masking within their confines. That's absolutely their right. Yeah. And then it's your right as a consumer to either go or not go. That being said, I would also say that if they do allow you to go in without a mask, that you be cognizant of others. Practice the social distancing. And you could, if you look in the parking lot and there's 500 cars out there and the store's not that big, you're probably going to be in pretty close proximity to some people. It's probably a better idea for you. And if you're not concerned for yourself, then you're probably concerned for others that you may come in contact with.
Do you wish that we could hand out common sense as much as these masks? Because sometimes it feels like some of these conversations could be really answered very quickly.
Yeah, they could. And the funny part is the issue becomes so divisive to some extent. Mm-hmm. And yet I would guess that 95% of the people are probably somewhat in the middle and would respond exactly how we're talking today. I'm going to be cognizant. There's situational awareness. When you come into the courthouse right now, it's a new device we have there, but there's a monitor there as you walk by the security point that takes your temperature. It's probably a good idea if you don't feel well, if you have symptoms, to stay home. If those symptoms don't resolve, probably go get tested. One of the things that we have going for us here in central Wisconsin, at least, is we're not even using half of our testing capacity. You see these lines in some of these states where they say, I've waited in line for 12, 13, 20 hours. I haven't gotten my results back I've heard cases, in fact, my parents, for 2 weeks. I was tested prior to this surgery I had. I was in and out of the testing facility in less than 5 minutes, and an hour and a half later, I had the results. So, we're lucky in that respect. I'd like to stay lucky in that respect.
That's a great point.
And it kind of amazes me that you have a much higher, although the infection rate is still exceptionally low, you still have much higher rates in Portage County and Marathon County and some of the surrounding counties, at least based on percentage of population, and yet we don't. So I'm not exactly sure why, especially when we have some of the largest medical facilities in our county. But I'd like to keep it that way.
Yeah.
It's uncertain. I think that things probably don't return to totally normal until you have a viable, reliable, low-cost treatment, or till you have a vaccine, and that is still on the horizon. Yet, as quick as this came on, February we were doing whatever we wanted, wherever we wanted to go. By March, things were shut down. Maybe somebody will stumble upon something.
Well, we know that some of our greatest and smartest leaders and minds are working on this, and hopefully, I agree with you there. I think that whether a cure might not be something that is right around the corner, but a strategic plan for testing could be. Relatively, that's something that is a lot more doable, and hopefully we can get to. And if we have something like that, certainly we're in a lot better shape. We're in a lot different position as far as having to lock down and those sorts of things. And to talk about monologues, man, you brought up some great points in that bit right there. That was really good. One of the things that you mentioned in there that I think is great is this gray area, the roofing example you had there. To have a mandated law about one way or another is pretty tough to do to people. Now, I think that we all understand, back in the day when seatbelts weren't mandatory and we all had to get used to that. And it could be a pain sometimes. Recycling was a pain for a while there, but we got used to it and now we just do it now without even thinking of it. There's certain times where we have had to make adjustments in our daily lives. But for the most part, one of the most American things there is not liking being told what to do. and sometimes we butt up against that, whether it is against science or our officials making these laws or anything. When you're dealing with a subject like that, how do you take in information? Do you do your best to listen to all sides? Do you try not to live in a bubble when it comes to that?
Absolutely. And inputs is extremely important. And the point I made earlier, I never mind somebody calling. In fact, everybody that I responded to initially who sent me an email, I not only respond by email, but I include my phone number because I'd much rather have a conversation than sit there all day typing. And plus, I don't get the true feeling sometimes from the typed written word as you do in your conversational nature. But it changes daily, and you hear from everybody. So if I got to admit, after about 30 or 40 of those emails, I stopped responding because I just didn't have the time. I mean, I would get nothing else done. But no, you listen to the general public, and certainly you take that into account. If you don't have societal buy-in, it's never going to work. Period. No matter where you are on any issue. And then more importantly, obviously, we listen to our health. I shouldn't say more importantly, but I take everything I hear anecdotally with a grain of salt.
Sure.
When we have the empirical data, that we get from our health department or from those others, you look at it much more closely. And then if you look across the state, if you look at places that have enacted certain ordinances, those are typically places that probably tend to this is a general saying, to generally support more government than those around the state that haven't. So then it becomes, I hate to say a political argument because it shouldn't.
Right.
But the reality is it does. And so, you deal with that, where you're at. And I'm going to tell you, if somebody tells you they know when this is going to end, they don't. They're lying to you.
Yeah.
If I told you today that I know what the rule's going to be tomorrow, I don't.
I got a bridge in San Francisco to sell you.
I'll sell you. Because we just don't. I mean, we're dealing with an unknown, and my only, I don't know, I guess my charge of the community would be wise, be smart, be situational in your decisions, and make sure you're doing the right thing for you and your family.
That's a great way where to go with that, Lance, because that's part of the reason I asked the question. I'll be honest. I felt like I kind of knew the answer a little bit. You come across in the times we've talked to each other, you are an open-minded person, and you seem to take in a lot of different information from a lot of different sources. And I think that that's something that we can, try to have everybody do, to do your homework, to read into these subjects, to not just take what's given to you, but do some homework and go to your trusted news sources, go to these sites that you know that you can count on, that are not coming from any certain angle. They're not in anybody's pocket. They're just giving you the real facts, your CDCs and that sort of thing. I mean, there's a number of them out there that we can trust. And if we don't rely on that, then really, why do we have these people? I mean, why do we have these jobs at all if we're not going to look to them in these situations? And something else you kind of have brought up, just it was a little bit here and there and everything, without really coming out and saying necessarily, is kind of treating each other. Getting back to our one of the things we're known for in the Midwest here, are treating each other right, our class, the way, our politeness with each other. Whether it is our health care officials or an essential worker or anything like that, having some patience and understanding that they are just as frustrated as we are, or they want things to be going more smoothly than as much as we do, and that sort of thing. Having some kind of just, whether it is any of our officials, and even with each other, with our fellow citizens that we walk around and bump into each other and everything like that. Hopefully don't bump into each other now. You got the 6 feet different, but just treating each other with some respect, with some kindness.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because as I travel around the country occasionally, in my other life as the county's association person, it's oftentimes I'm talking to somebody. They go, "You must be from the Midwest," and you typically ask why. They go, "Well, you said hi," or you stop for a moment to talk to me.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily typical where we're from, but at the end of the day, a lot of the information you get is spun. So we certainly try to get that from those places that you consider reliable, and some of those are health departments. And then no matter what part of the political spectrum in which you fall, at the end of the day, I've always said, whether I agree or disagree, whether the motives and methods are the same, generally speaking, if you talk to elected officials, you're going to find that the only reason they want to be where they are is to make their community a better place. Now, how we get there, two different thought processes sometimes. One of the things we talk about, and I have found just abhorrent, is watching people tear apart the country and destroy stuff. It amazes me when I watch somebody burning something or tearing something down, and I say, hey, I own that. I'm a taxpayer. They're not hurting the police department, the fire department, the city. They're hurting me. That's coming right out of my pocket as we rebuild. And so, I guess what I would tell people out there is, and you touched on, is be respectful. There's ways to change things. There's ways to get things done. I don't know anybody who's on our county board. I don't even know any of our state legislators in this area who won't listen to you, who like to get those phone calls. And sometimes the person calling you just wants to vent. And that goes back to that old adage, 2 ears, 1 mouth. And I have sometimes listened to somebody basically vent for 20, 30 minutes, and without me saying a word. At the end of 20 minutes, they'll go, well, maybe you're right. And I haven't said a thing yet.
Right.
They just need to get it off their chests.
One of the things that you mentioned there, I did want to touch on before we let you go today, and again, we're speaking with Lance Pliml, Wood County Board Chairman, and thank you to our friends at Wisconsin Rapids Community Media, is some of the park vandalism that's gone on recently and we got to put a stop to that. Yeah,
there's been... the last couple of weeks, we've had some pretty severe vandalism out of some of our parks. Now, one thing that's been driving our revenue this year and is going to help us out in the short run is that revenue is way up. That flight from the cities to some extent, the want to get out into wide open spaces. Our campership, for instance, is way up. People are using our parks. But we've had some pretty severe vandalism. And the one thing I've always said is 75,000 sets of eyes out there are necessary to make any community safe. And when we survey people in our community and say, what's the one thing that you want more than anything else, it's public safety. Well, if you are somebody who cooperates with those efforts, again, keeps your tax rates down, because that kind of vandalism comes out of everybody's pockets, and it makes it less attractive. When we have to close a facility in a park to deal with the vandalism that somebody perpetrated, I need you as individuals. If you hear something, if you see something, if you think you see something that might be a little bit out of the ordinary, don't be afraid to give a call in that information, because our law enforcement agencies and our departments are extremely, they work with the public. They work with them extremely well. They're extremely responsive. and that only goes in a long way to making our community a better place.
Where right now there's not a person in this area that hasn't thought about wanting to bring more jobs to this area for years, not just recently. For years we've been talking about this, and now more than ever we need to do that. Well, if you're going to invite somebody over and ask them to hang out for a while or something like that, you probably want your house looking right. You probably don't want it, in shambles and everything, and a million pots and pans and all this kind of stuff. You want it to look as good as it can. We need our community to look that way right now.
Yeah,
We're trying to get businesses to come here. We are trying to get people to stay here. We want to give them reasons to.
Yeah, and I always say take it down to the lowest common denominator. And a home is a great example. When people come to our community, I can't tell people what to do. Like I said, we live in this side, but if the yards are cut, if the boulevards along the streets, if the weeds are killed, if those businesses that own property, I use 8th Street as an example in Wisconsin Rapids, if those are kept up, when those people come to our community to camp or to events, they go, this is a nice place to live. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's a place I should locate my business to. I try to be extremely cognizant of those people that are visiting us as we look to deal with the economic issues. And right now, obviously, my thoughts go out to all those people, that work at the paper company right
Absolutely.
now. And the challenges that we're facing right there. But, that's a single industry, single business. It's a big one. But we have to be cognizant of that everywhere.
Right.
We have to make sure that we're an inviting community, that we're friendly, as you alluded to. And that's the one thing I do here when I get around the state. And I applaud those people out there in the community who make us that way.
Yeah, I think one of the things that not at all, I think that you'll agree with me on is that we don't want to we might let people know that I think that we get the idea that overall our community is that way. That overall we have the overwhelming majority of people in here, this community, are open-minded, are understanding, are good people, that kind of thing. All the stuff that we're talking about here. Every area has its apples. That sometimes you gotta pick and choose which ones you're going to use for baking and which ones you're going to make eat, that kind of thing. It's we have some of that, and it's keeping an eye out for that. And kind of again, come back to that personal responsibility of you take care of your own backyard, and pretty soon, if everybody does that, the whole town looks good. Things like that. Just in looking out for each other.
Yeah, I'm a pretty big proponent. You broke it, you fix it.
Yes.
So if we find out who perpetrates these crimes or who's doing it, rather have them pay for it than you, because you're here every day working and you're not out there causing that problem.
That is something that, there was a number of times growing up I had that happen. Lance, before we let you go, was there anything you wanted to touch on we didn't get a chance to?
No, other than just to tell the community, be smart, mm-hmm. be safe, work with us, tell you that government at all levels I think is doing their best job to try to get us answers, to try to adapt, and be reactive to what's happening out there on the street. And I can assure you that our Wood County Health Department has been an example used around the state for what we have done here, and we will continue down that road.
Very proud of what they've done, and very thankful for the work that you and the board have done. More than anything, just personally, glad to have you in studio. Really good to see you. Really good to see you up and about and all right and everything.
I felt bad missing him. I only missed a day. Once I got to take the bandage off, I could actually see the camera.
But it was the timing of it, it works out that way.
Yeah, it was the day before, but I love being here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate the time, sir. And thanks a lot for hanging out with us and everything you're doing for the community. We'll talk again real soon.
Thank you.
And a big thank you to our friends at Wisconsin Rapids Community Media and all the great work they do as well. We will be back with more Morning Magazine coming up for you. We have our friends from the ODC right around the corner here on AM 1320 WFHR.